Welcome to Mr. Bing Watch Channel. I'm your host, and today I'll be telling you a story that will make you question everything you believe about ambition, power, and the price of success. This is not a typical tale of good versus evil. This is a story about how the most dangerous enemy we face might be ourselves. So settle in, because what I'm about to share with you will stay with you long after this video ends. Make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell, and like this video as we dive into the chilling world of the Circle of Valiance. Daniel Mercer's hands trembled as he sat in the Harrington University library, staring at the rejection letter from his financial aid office. The fluorescent lights hummed above him, casting harsh shadows across the mahogany tables where wealthy legacy students typed on their MacBook Pros without a care in the world. Around him, diamonds glinted from fingers, designer logos whispered from clothing, and conversations drifted about family compounds and ski vacations. Daniel had none of it. He had a part-time job, a scholarship that covered barely half his tuition, and the weight of his family's expectations crushing down on his shoulders like a physical force. He was 19 years old, the first in his family to attend an elite university, and he was drowning. Not in the traditional sense. His grades were perfect, his professors praised his intellect, his essays were returned marked with enthusiastic comments. But socially, financially, spiritually, Daniel Mercer was disappearing beneath an ocean of privilege he could never afford to swim in. The other students seemed to glide through Harrington's gilded halls as if the university had been built for them, which, in many ways, it had been. Their grandfathers' names were carved into the buildings. Their families' portraits hung in the administration offices. They belonged to this world in a way Daniel never could. That evening, as Daniel trudged back to his tiny dorm room in Harrison House, his mind was already calculating. He would need another job. Maybe he could tutor high school students online. Perhaps he could sell his textbooks. Perhaps he could simply accept that his dream of a Harrington degree, of stepping into a world of opportunity, would come at a cost that would take him a decade to repay. The thought made him nauseous. The envelope was black, pristine, and completely out of place, sitting centered on his dorm room floor as if someone had carefully positioned it there. His name was written on the back in elegant calligraphy, Daniel Mercer. There was no other address, no postage. Someone had hand-delivered this to his room. His pulse quickened as he picked it up. The envelope was heavy, expensive, and when he opened it, he found a card that made his breath catch. The card was black with gold embossing. It was unlike anything he'd ever held, and as he traced his fingers over the words, he read them silently, then again, then a third time. For those destined to lead, the Circle of Valiance awaits. Midnight, library courtyard. There was a symbol at the bottom, 3 interlocking rings forming a perfect circle. And then in smaller text, come alone, tell no one, your life depends on discretion. Daniel should have been afraid. He should have thrown the card away, reported it to campus security, laughed it off as an elaborate prank. Instead, he felt something ignite inside him. This was an invitation. This was recognition. This was someone somewhere telling him that he mattered, that he was destined for something more than drowning. He checked the clock. It was 11:15 p.m. At 11:47 p.m., Daniel stood in the shadows of the library courtyard, his heart hammering against his ribs like a caged animal. The October air was crisp, carrying the smell of autumn leaves and old stone. The courtyard was empty except for him, or so he thought. Then, from the darkness beneath the library's ancient stone archway, figures began to emerge. 6 of them, draped in long black cloaks that seemed to swallow the moonlight. The center figure lowered their hood. It was Eleanor Rhodes, a senior he'd seen around campus, the kind of girl who seemed to glow with an invisible light. She was stunningly beautiful, with sharp cheekbones and intelligent eyes that seemed to see right through you. She wore a gold ring on her left hand, 3 interlocking bands that matched the symbol on the card. When she smiled at him, Daniel felt something in his chest shift. "Daniel Mercer," she said, her voice smooth as silk. "We've been watching you." Before he could respond, the other figures moved around him. They weren't threatening, but there was something choreographed about their movements, something that suggested this had been done many times before. Eleanor approached him directly, and in her hands she held a black blindfold made of soft silk. "Don't be afraid," she whispered. "After tonight, you'll understand why you were chosen." The blindfold slipped over his eyes, and darkness consumed him. What happened next existed only as sensations and sounds. Strong hands guided him through corridors he didn't recognize, downstairs that seemed to spiral endlessly downward. The air grew cooler, damper. He could smell stone and something else, incense perhaps, or candle wax. The hands released him, and he heard Eleanor's voice, now echoing as if they were in a large chamber. "The Circle of Valiance has existed for over 100 years," she said, her words slow and deliberate. "We are the architects of power at Harrington. We are the invisible hand that guides destiny. Those who join us become part of something greater than themselves. Those who betray us understand what isolation truly means." Around him, he heard other voices. He couldn't tell how many, whispering in the darkness. It was both beautiful and terrifying, like being inside a living organism. "Recite the creed," Eleanor commanded. Daniel's mouth was dry. He didn't know the creed. But then Eleanor spoke the words, slowly, and he found himself repeating them, his voice shaking slightly. "To the circle I owe my rise. To discretion, my silence. To loyalty, my eternal devotion. To those who came before and those who will come after, I am bound. What is asked of me, I will provide. What is required of me, I will give. This I promise before the circle and before myself." The words felt ancient. They felt binding. They felt like a contract written not just in ink but in blood. Eleanor removed his blindfold. They were in a candlelit chamber deep beneath the library, stone walls covered in tapestries bearing the symbol of the three rings. In the center of the room, on a pedestal, lay an enormous leather-bound book. Eleanor guided him toward it. "The ledger," she said softly. "Every member's name is recorded here. Every sacrifice noted, every success celebrated. You are about to become immortal in the eyes of the circle." She opened the book to a blank page and handed him an ornate fountain pen. Daniel's hand moved almost of its own accord. He signed his name, Daniel Mercer. Beneath his name, Eleanor wrote something in elegant script. He couldn't quite read it, something about potential for greatness and catalyst for rise. Eleanor leaned close to him then, and he could smell her perfume, something expensive and intoxicating. "Everything you want will come to you now," she whispered. "The scholarship you need, the grades you crave, the respect you deserve, all of it is within your reach. But only if you stay loyal, only if you understand that the circle demands everything, and in return gives you exactly what you need." She stepped back and smiled. "Welcome, Daniel, to the Circle of Valiance." When Daniel left the chamber an hour later, his head was spinning. He couldn't explain what had just happened, couldn't fully process it, but he felt different, marked, chosen. As he walked back to his dorm, he told himself it was all theater, elaborate performance art designed to bond a group of elite students. He told himself it meant nothing. He told himself he would forget about it by morning. He was wrong. Within 3 days, Daniel received notification that his financial aid had been unexpectedly increased. A full scholarship appeared in his name. No explanation, no fanfare, just a simple email from the registrar's office. He would have free tuition. The weight that had been crushing his chest lifted so suddenly that he actually gasped when he read the words. Within a week, his organic chemistry professor, the notoriously difficult Dr. Ashford, who rarely gave anyone higher than a B, pulled him aside and asked if he'd be interested in becoming a teaching assistant. The position came with a stipend and flexible hours. Daniel's hands actually shook as he accepted. Within 2 weeks, he was invited to an exclusive dinner hosted by the dean, only the top 20 students in the freshman class. Eleanor was there, and she winked at him across the room when no one was looking. His classmates suddenly began acknowledging him in the hallways. People who had ignored him now wanted to be his friends. The transformation was so complete that within a month, Daniel could barely remember what it felt like to be invisible. It was intoxicating. It was also exactly what the circle had promised. The first monthly meeting happened on the third Wednesday of October. Daniel received an invitation. A simple card slipped under his door, and at midnight he found himself back in the chamber. This time he wasn't nervous. He felt like he belonged. There were 8 other members present, including Eleanor. They sat in a circle around a table, the candlelight casting dancing shadows across their faces. The meetings were strange. They began with the recitation of the creed, but then turned to conversations that felt deliberately cryptic and unsettling. Eleanor would speak about maintaining balance and what must be paid, and the sacrifice required to sustain power. The others would nod knowingly, as if they understood some secret language that Daniel was still learning to interpret. Success requires equilibrium, Eleanor said during one meeting in November. For every person who rises, another must fall. For every door that opens, another must close. The circle understands this natural law. We work with it, not against it. Those of you who are wise enough to embrace this principle will find that your greatest desires manifest themselves. Daniel listened, unsettled but captivated. He told himself these were just metaphors, philosophical discussions about the nature of success in society. He buried the small voice inside him that whispered that something was wrong. Something was deeply wrong. Then Jonas Hartley, a junior who worked in admissions, pulled Daniel aside after a meeting in December. "I need to get out," Jonas said urgently, his eyes darting around nervously. They were in the basement corridor, away from the others. "This was a mistake, all of it. I need to leave the circle." Daniel felt a chill run through him. He'd never heard anyone speak like this. "What do you mean? It's great, isn't it? Everything is going perfectly." "That's exactly what they want you to think," Jonas hissed. "But there's a cost, Daniel, a real cost. I can feel it. Everyone who gets what they want from the circle has to pay. I made mistakes for them. I did things I can't take back. I can't be part of this anymore." Before Daniel could respond, Jonas hurried away into the darkness. A week later, the university announced that Jonas Hartley had withdrawn for personal and mental health reasons. He was gone, not expelled, not suspended, just simply gone, as if he had evaporated. When Daniel attended the next meeting, he couldn't stop himself from checking the ledger. He opened it carefully, looking for Jonas's name. It was there, yes, but something was wrong. The entry was fading, becoming translucent, letters disappearing like morning mist. As he watched, unable to move, the name disappeared entirely. The page was blank. It was as if Jonas had never existed in the circle at all. Daniel's hands trembled as he closed the book. When he looked up, Eleanor was standing there, watching him with an expression of mild amusement. "He wanted to leave," Eleanor said simply. "The circle accommodates those who no longer wish to be part of us, but such departures require a price. For Jonas, it was simple forgetfulness. The university will have trouble finding records of him. His friends will find themselves unable to remember details of his life. Eventually, it will be as if he was never here at all." "That's not possible," Daniel whispered, but even as he said the words, he didn't believe them. Eleanor's smile widened. "Isn't it? Tell me, Daniel, how did you get your scholarship? How did your grade point average suddenly improve? How did that professor, whom you'd never spoken to before, offer you that position?" Daniel couldn't answer. He thought of the moments over the past weeks, small coincidences that had seemed inconsequential at the time, a professor mentioning his name to another professor. "The circle is more than a society," Eleanor continued. "We are a force that moves through this university like blood through veins. We shape outcomes. We select who rises and who falls. And those who try to leave us, well, they find that the world becomes very difficult to navigate. Jonas will live, but he will be alone. He will be forgotten. He will find that doors close before he can even reach them. It's a mercy, really, compared to other fates." As winter descended on Harrington, Daniel found himself attending more meetings, though he couldn't quite remember being explicitly invited. The circle had become his life. His grades soared, not through studying, but through what felt like intuitive understanding that appeared whenever he sat for an exam. His scholarship increased again. He was written up in the campus newspaper as an emerging star of the freshman class. People who had dismissed him 3 months ago now sought his attention and approval. But with every success came a growing hollowness inside him, and with that hollowness came requests. In February, Eleanor approached him during a meeting. "You've been with us for 4 months," she said. "You've benefited immeasurably. Now it's time for you to give something back." "What do you mean?" Daniel asked, though he already sensed where this was going. "You need to make an offering," Eleanor explained, her voice gentle. "Every member of the circle must sacrifice something meaningful, something that demonstrates your loyalty and your commitment to our principles. It should be something that holds you back, something that prevents you from being truly free to rise." Daniel's stomach twisted. "I don't understand." "You will," Eleanor promised. Think about what holds you back, Daniel. Think about what would need to disappear for you to be completely unbounded. When you've identified it, come to me. For days, Daniel couldn't stop thinking about her words. What held him back? His conscience? His sense of morality? His connection to other people? He found himself walking past his roommate's study sessions, watching the other boy with his textbook spread across his desk. His roommate, Mark, was brilliant too. Too brilliant, perhaps. Mark was competing with him, in subtle ways, for academic recognition. Mark had been nominated for the same honor society position Daniel wanted. Mark was taking the same advanced courses. And Mark, Daniel realized with a sinking feeling, had written a paper in their philosophy class that was far too similar to an essay by an established scholar. Not plagiarism exactly, but close enough. A serious overlap, the kind of thing that could be reported to the honor board. Daniel made the report anonymously. He watched as campus security investigated as Mark was called before the honor board, as his roommate's face went pale when he realized what was happening. By the end of March, Mark Hastings had been expelled, his parents had pulled him out, the room that had once been his was empty. And Daniel won the Honor Society position. He received recognition from the dean. His name appeared in the university magazine. He was invited to speak at a prospective student recruitment event. But sleep became impossible. He tried to study, but he couldn't concentrate. He tried to eat, but food tasted like ashes. He attended classes in a fog, floating through lectures and seminars like a ghost. The thing that had once been ambition had transformed into something darker, a hunger that couldn't be satisfied, a need that grew larger the more it was fed. By April, Daniel knew he had to get out. The realization hit him one night as he stood on his dorm room balcony, 3 stories above the campus grounds, wondering how easy it would be to step over the railing. The thought terrified him, but not enough to stop it from coming. He realized then that he was no longer himself. The person who had walked into the circle had been idealistic and ambitious, but he had possessed a moral foundation. That foundation was gone now, replaced by something cold and hollow. He made his decision. He would expose them. He would show the university, the world, what the circle really was. The evidence would be irrefutable. The recordings of their meetings, Eleanor's own words about maintaining balance and sacrificing others, the mysteriously fading name in the ledger, it would all be enough to destroy them. On a night when he knew a meeting was scheduled, Daniel dressed in dark clothes and made his way to the library. He'd stolen a key to the basement access months ago during one of his visits. His heart hammered as he descended the stairs. The candlelit chamber was exactly as he remembered it. The other members were gathering, removing their cloaks, revealing the faces of students he recognized. Prep school boys with expensive watches, girls whose families owned entire city blocks. They were human, really, which somehow made it worse. Daniel crept into a corner and activated the voice recorder he'd borrowed from the media lab. He positioned himself behind a pillar where he could capture Eleanor's voice clearly. The meeting began, and Eleanor's words came exactly as they always did. Talk of balance and sacrifice and the natural hierarchy of success. And then, remarkably, Eleanor said something new. "Tonight, we address the matter of Daniel Mercer's doubt," Eleanor announced, and Daniel felt his blood turn to ice. Daniel came to us wanting power, wanting success, wanting to matter. We gave him all of this. But now he questions us. Now he questions the natural order of things. His doubt is a cancer. We must remove it. Daniel realized with horror that they knew. They knew about his plan. They knew he was in the room, but he didn't stop recording. He continued recording as Eleanor described what would happen to him. Continued recording as the other circle members moved with that familiar choreography. Continued recording as Eleanor walked directly toward his hiding spot and looked right at him, smiling. The next morning, Daniel's entire body was shaking as he sent the recording to his friend, Sarah Chen, a student journalist who worked for the Harrington Herald. He included a letter explaining everything: the circle, the initiation, the sacrifices, Jonas's mysterious departure, Mark's expulsion. He couldn't expose them himself, but Sarah could. The evidence would speak for itself. He waited for a response all day. He kept his phone in his pocket, checking it obsessively. By evening, there was still nothing. That night, he tried to sleep but couldn't. His mind kept returning to Eleanor's certainty. She had known. Somehow, they had known. At 11:45 p.m., his phone buzzed. A news notification. His heart leaped. Sarah had published the story. No. His heart stopped. Sarah Chen had been in a car accident. A terrible accident. She was dead. The notification detailed it clinically. A single vehicle collision on the highway. No other cars involved. She'd lost control for no apparent reason. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Police were investigating. There were no signs of mechanical failure or foul play. Daniel felt the world tilt beneath him. He was going to be sick. He was going to scream. He was going to die. He grabbed his laptop and raced toward Eleanor's apartment, which was off campus in a building that reeked of old money and privilege. He didn't know how he got there, only that he was pounding on her door at midnight, and she answered it as if she'd been expecting him. Eleanor was dressed in her pajamas, looking utterly unsurprised to see him on her doorstep, wild-eyed and ranting. "You did this!" Daniel screamed at her. "You killed her! You killed Sarah! You killed Jonas! You're monsters!" Eleanor simply stepped aside, inviting him in with a gesture. Her apartment was exactly what he would have expected. Tasteful, expensive, decorated with books and art that cost more than Daniel's entire education. "Sit down," Eleanor said calmly, "before you fall down." Daniel found himself sitting on an Italian leather sofa, his body betraying his mind's desire to keep raging at her. Eleanor poured 2 glasses of wine from a crystal decanter and handed him one. He didn't drink it. "You think we silenced your friend?" Eleanor said, her voice almost sad. "You think we arranged this accident? You think we are monsters?" "You did this," Daniel repeated, but his voice had lost its force. Eleanor walked to a standing mirror in the corner of her apartment, an antique piece with an ornate gold frame. She guided Daniel to stand in front of it. "Look at yourself," she commanded. Daniel looked. The person staring back at him was a stranger. His eyes were hollow and ancient, possessing a cold calculation that hadn't been there before joining the circle. His face had thinned, sharpened, becoming almost reptilian in its lack of warmth. This wasn't who he was, or was it? Wasn't it possible that this was exactly who he had always been, hiding beneath layers of idealism and self-deception? "We didn't change you," Eleanor said softly. "We didn't make you report your roommate to the honor board. We didn't force you to sacrifice him to the machine of your ambition. You did that, Daniel. Your hands made those choices. Your ambition enabled those actions. Your silence after each victory, each sacrifice, that was you too." "But Jonas," Daniel began. "Wanted out," Eleanor finished. "Yes. And his departure was unfortunate, but it wasn't us who erased him. It was the universe, responding to the imbalance his doubt created. And your friend Sarah? She was careless, Daniel. She drove distracted because she was upset about something she read. She made a mistake on the highway. Tragic, certainly, but not orchestrated." "I don't believe you." "No," Eleanor agreed. "But you will, because the alternative is admitting that you are responsible, that your choices, not our manipulation, led to these outcomes. That's much harder to live with, isn't it?" Daniel felt something crack inside him. Eleanor continued speaking, her voice gentle and terrible. "The circle doesn't control you, Daniel. It simply reveals you. Every single member who joins us comes in believing we will seduce them toward darkness, that we will transform them into something monstrous. And we do offer that transformation, but only if it's what you truly want. The circle is a mirror. What you see in it depends on what you bring to it." She placed the leather-bound ledger on the table in front of him. It was open to his entry. Beneath his name, the words Eleanor had written that first night were visible. "Potential for greatness. Catalyst for rise. Perfect subject." "You're free to leave," Eleanor said. "Go to the authorities. Expose us. Show them the recording you made. They'll investigate and find nothing. No secret chamber. The library basement is just storage." Daniel stood up. He wanted to rage, to deny, to attack her. Instead, he found himself walking toward the door. "Go," Eleanor said. "Live your life. But remember that you carry the circle with you now. The choices you make going forward will all be driven by the hunger you've tasted, the power you've felt, the recognition you've received. You'll never be satisfied again with ordinary success, and that hunger will drive you to do things you can't yet imagine. You're already one of us, Daniel. You just didn't realize it yet." Daniel left her apartment without responding. He walked through the empty streets of the city, his mind numb, his body functioning on autopilot. When he returned to campus, he didn't go to the authorities. He didn't try to expose the circle. He did something that felt, somehow, worse. He deleted the recording. He burned the letter he'd written to Sarah. He attended the next monthly meeting, and when Eleanor asked him why he'd continued doubting, he simply knelt and recited the creed with more conviction than he'd ever summoned before. Years passed. Daniel Mercer graduated from Harrington with the highest honors. He went to Harvard Law School on a full scholarship. He became a successful attorney, then a consultant, and eventually a high-ranking executive in a prestigious firm. By the age of 35, he had achieved everything he'd ever dreamed of. He had an office that overlooked the city. He had wealth and influence and recognition. He had everything. His office was decorated impeccably, awards lining the walls, degrees framed and displayed, photographs of him shaking hands with powerful people. On his desk, an object sat in a place of honor, a black leather-bound book. Not the original ledger, but a replica he'd commissioned. And on his left hand, a gold ring bearing the symbol of 3 interlocking circles. One evening, as the sun set over the city and painted his office walls in shades of orange and red, his assistant knocked on the door. "Sir, the members are waiting in the conference room," she said respectfully. Daniel straightened his tie and checked his reflection in the window. The man looking back was successful, powerful, and utterly confident. He bore no resemblance to that struggling freshman who had felt so desperate for belonging. Or did he? Perhaps the desperation was still there, hidden beneath the expensive suit and the confident smile. "Tell them I'll be right there," Daniel said, and rose from his desk. As he walked toward the conference room, he didn't think about Jonas, whose life had been reduced to nothing. He didn't think about Sarah Chen, whose car had veered off the road. He didn't think about Mark Hastings, expelled for a crime that Daniel himself had fabricated the evidence for. He didn't think about all the small sacrifices, the ethical compromises, the moments when he'd silenced his conscience for the sake of advancement. Instead, he thought about the meeting ahead, about the new members he would be initiating, about the freshmen he would be selecting from Harrington's incoming class, brilliant kids, ambitious kids, desperate kids who wanted to matter. He thought about how he would present the circle to them as an opportunity, as a pathway to greatness, as the thing that would transform their ordinary lives into something extraordinary. He thought about how easy it would be to corrupt them the way he had been corrupted, how he would show them the ledger, tell them the stories, offer them the world on a silver platter, and how, inevitably, they would make the same choices he had made. They would sacrifice others. They would compromise their morals. They would climb over bodies to reach the top, because that was the true nature of ambition. That was what the circle had really taught him. As Daniel entered the conference room and saw the faces of the members turn toward him in recognition, he understood the final, crushing truth. He hadn't escaped the circle at all. The circle had escaped him. It had been him all along. Every corrupt choice, every betrayal, every moment of calculated cruelty, these were Daniel Mercer expressing his true nature. The circle had simply provided permission. And now he would provide that same permission to others. The circle didn't break. It couldn't break, because it wasn't a society external to humanity. It was humanity itself, the darker, more honest version of ambition that existed in everyone's heart. The circle was simply the place where people like Daniel went to stop pretending otherwise. So if you're watching this right now, I want you to remember something. Never trust the members of a secret society. But more importantly, never trust yourself when success comes too easily. Never trust the voice inside you that whispers that your ambition justifies your actions. Never trust the smile of the person offering you everything you've ever wanted. Because the most dangerous member of any secret society isn't the leader, it's you. If you made it this far, do me a favor. Like this video, subscribe to the channel for more stories that will keep you up at night. Comment down below with your thoughts. Did Daniel have a choice, or was he doomed from the moment he opened that envelope? The answer, I think, is far more terrifying than either alternative.